Well, hi guys, I'm back with you. Just a quick short break between the last video we did, and I have an awesome guest for us today. His name is Kirk Nurmi. He is a retired attorney. He is an author and a life coach. And today we're going to talk with him a little bit about legal stress. What does that look like for lawyers? I mean, we got a lot of different cases going on right now. I can imagine after the recent, unfortunate event in Glendale, there's probably an attorney up right now wondering what they're going to do for the next 72 hours. And I wanted some insight from someone that was not the normal figure that you would go to for PTSD. We have a stigma on trauma that means it happened on the battlefield, it happened in a car accident. There was these things that something extraordinary had to happen, whether it was first responder or veteran or whatnot. Being a lawyer doesn't seem to come to the mind for the first thing when we think about PTSD. And I wanted to bring Kirk on to kind of give us some insight onto what that life was like and where he's at now and what he's doing to give back to the community in the way of his book and his life coaching and all sorts of amazing things that I've heard him talk about with other people and he's talked about with me. So without further ado, I want to bring Mr. Kirk Nurmi to our live stream.
Hi, Chris. It's a pleasure to be with you here today.
Awesome. Thank you for having the time to do this, Kirk. And why don't you take a minute and just tell our audience and viewers here a little bit more about you and who you are and how they might have already known you and what you're doing right now in the community here in Arizona.
Sure. Thank you for that. Back in 1997, I entered law school with the idea that I was going to become a criminal defense attorney when I graduated. I had a friend who had some ties around here, I guess, and I got an interview with Maricopa County Public Defender's Office, and I worked there for about 10 years. The last few years as a capital defense attorney, which is how most people came to know me because I was the court-ordered counsel for the now very infamous Jodi Arias and was involved in one of Arizona's most prominent trials. That trial lasted over 2 years before it was completely resolved. Not every day for 2 years, but before it was completely resolved. And ultimately, it was a very high stress situation. There was a lot of hypervigilance involved on my part, death threats, things of that nature. And eventually, when the case wound down, so too did my health as I became diagnosed with stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma about 4 to 5 months later. And in my heart immediately that the stress of the Arias trial was the reason for that diagnosis. So after, digesting that diagnosis and going to the dark place of wondering whether I was going to not go through chemotherapy, I made the decision to go through chemotherapy with the idea that I wasn't going to live whatever remaining days I had that I would benefit from having gone through chemo by living my life the same way I had. So I moved forward into this new direction, understanding a lot of the stressors that are out there in the legal community, mindful of the fact that there's a lot of suicides within the legal community and a lot of unhappiness in the legal community. So I decided to venture out and into that direction, and it's taken me in a whole bunch of directions I never would have imagined, and it's all been to the good.
Right. And, it's funny you say that. A lot of people, all we know of the legal world is, what I watch on TV, The Good Wife, or whatever show that I can kind of get into understanding the psychology behind law and what lawyers might experience, which I know is Hollywood and whatnot. But, give us some insight on that. I got a friend that, he just graduated the bar and he went to go look for a job and, he's sober. He doesn't want to drink, but everyone is pounding, slamming down. Is substance abuse an issue? Is suicide prevalent? I have no idea. It wasn't this is a demographic that, I don't think about. I only call the lawyers when I need them and I'm in trouble and I got to call you. I didn't ask him how he was doing today. I said, oh crap, get me out of trouble. I'm in jail. or whatever the case may be. Give us some insight to some of those emotional struggles and some of those coping mechanisms that maybe you saw as a lawyer in your comrades that, maybe some people are struggling right now and they don't know how to reach out for help. They're always helping other people.
Sure. Substance abuse is a huge problem within the legal community, as are suicides, as are unhappiness. We look at, when we talk about PTSD too, look at, those triggering events like the murder, the mayhem, some kind of life-threatening incident. And that ultimately is a lot of what lawyers, whether it's a divorce lawyer, criminal defense lawyer, as was the entirety of my practice, was the idea that there was this triggering horrific event that the lawyer was supposed to take care of. And you're very correct in pointing out the reality that it wasn't about the lawyer's feelings. It wasn't about anything else. It was about wanting the results out of the lawyer. And that puts a lot of pressure on the lawyer. And that pressure needs an outlet. And more often than not, we see that outlet can be unhealthy, as in, one of the things that the bar monitors, and probably not well enough to my belief, is the idea that, the drinking and some of those things that go along with what lawyers might justify as stress release.
It's interesting things that you bring up, and it's like, we have to realize at the end of the day, we're all human, Oh, hold on. Lost my audio. Can you still hear me?
I can.
Oh, okay. Some of the things are, that I guess we think is, lawyers are just other human beings like myself as a healthcare worker, as a police officer, as, a stay-at-home mom. And the idea that, you guys are immune to some stuff is probably just kind of ridiculous to me at this point. It's like, but again, a lot of our audience and viewers that I talk to, people think that the only way you can experience trauma is by being on a battlefield in the middle of a desert or wherever that might have been for war. And so it's interesting to hear some of the struggles that, lawyers have. Now let's talk about this book, this Fighting for Yourself.
Well,
what is that all about?
Let me correct one misconception I want to talk about in a criminal justice world before I get into that, if I will, because you brought up, I think, a very important point that battlefield PTSD is the most accepted kind of PTSD, and others tend to be looked at with skepticism, right? When we talk about, especially when defense lawyers aren't well thought of generally anyway, so that's going to be dismissed. But it's police officers, right? You said first responders, fire, everything else. And it has even trickled down, and studies have shown this, that it trickles down to jurors, particularly jurors in death penalty cases, because those jurors are seeing things that they have never seen for the first time. Meaning, and all the group of people, like the defense attorneys and things like that, and cops and jurors, when they're impaneled, they're all going to see a death scene. They're all going to see a crime scene. They're all going to see brutality. They're all going to see autopsy photos, things that are very traumatic to the person and that other people don't see. So it works its way down to everyone and every person that is involved in the criminal justice process. And I also think probably, in family law and that sort of thing. So I want to kind of begin to dispel that myth. And I've even read studies that 1 in 5 cancer patients, somebody who's going through chemotherapy, will develop PTSD because their mortality has been put into view, and it's a very traumatic event. So we need to start, and this is why I really wanted to address this, we need to start washing away those misconceptions that PTSD is only valid for soldiers and something should be greeted with skepticism for everyone else, because it's just simply not the case.
Right. And I appreciate you bringing light to that, because a lot of people don't understand. And even for people who are survivors, it's awkward if you constantly hear the bombardment of news saying that, what society accepts is trauma, and they might not feel empowered enough to go get the help. So, this is what Help Me PTSD is all about. We want to break those stigmas down. We want to be able to help those that are suffering regardless of how they were traumatized, whether you're a lawyer, a firefighter, or a veteran. We want to provide those continual community of support to make sure there is a resource for, I'm experiencing anxiety. Where do I go for that? And, those are some of the things that motivate me to do what we're doing. So you were about to go into the book, and I know are you finished with it? Is this coming up, or is it available now?
It's been out. Fighting for Yourself has been out for over a year now. It was a self-care guide for lawyers. When I first left the legal profession, my intention was to reach out to lawyers and help with their stress and their outlets, because referencing what you saw before, you talked about your friend with the lawyer and seeing that they're all out there drinking, those sort of things, right? Those sort of Band-Aid type measures that are really destructive in the end. So what I wanted to try to do is provide lawyers, from the perspective of someone who's been there at the highest level, a kind of roadmap. Part of it is a roadmap to my recovery, but part of it could be a roadmap to theirs as well, because of the similarity, and to try to alter and change some of those habits for the good. Because when we're working too much, when we're drinking too much, when we're doing all these things, what happens? Eventually, we're going to get to the end of our life and wonder what became of it. And there are extra stresses on lawyers because, like you referenced earlier, right? When you call, if you're getting arrested, you don't give a crap about how the lawyer's day is going or anything else. You just want out of jail. And that's completely understandable. But that attitude never really shifts. It's, what can the lawyer do for me, right? It's not about anything else. It's, what can the lawyer do for me? And it's also, when you look at, if somebody gets arrested, their parents, right? We saw you reference the tragedy in Glendale that happened last night, right? Somewhere that kid's parents is thinking, save my son, especially if that turns out to be a death penalty case. Somewhere they are looking at an attorney asking them to save their son, right? Right. And so there's a lot of pressure there, and it's so easy to get in this trap of how you need to work, you need to fight for your clients, and fight and fight and fight, and you're working 12, 14 hours a day, everything else. Well, the supposition, and hence the title of the book, is, well, who's fighting for you?
Right. No, and I think that's a great point. It's and again, for all trauma survivors, we have to fight for ourselves. So even though this book is geared towards lawyers, other people would benefit from reading it, right?
Oh, there's not it's certainly addressed to those, in the profession with some of those things, but certainly the lessons are universal, because when we talk about it, because working too much, drinking too much, not eating right, not taking care of ourselves is not just the domain of lawyers, right? It's the domain of most of humanity. We work too much. We say, oh, screw it, I'm going to eat fast food, or, I deserve this drink at night, or I deserve to go out to happy hour and complain about my life every single afternoon instead of doing something about it. So yeah, the lessons are universal, and they're really quite, to me, simple shifts. Like, a lot of people say, well, it's easier said than done. I think in some ways it's easier done than said, because when we start saying these things, we start having a discussion with ourselves. We start having a debate. When we do them, there's no room for debate. We just begin to change the behavior.
No, and that's some very good points you bring up there. I'm definitely going to have to check out your book. I'll try to find it on Amazon here, and I'll definitely order a copy from you. And how else can people find you? Where can they find you if they want to follow you on social? If they want to get in touch with you and learn more about what you're doing now, post all the attorney craziness that you did in the past, I guess your past life now, and where can they find you and follow what you're doing now with all the positivity you're bringing?
Well, they can go to unchainedlives.com. I do a lot of speaking events and that sort of thing to corporations. Obviously, in the era of COVID, I'm not doing much of that, but I do speaking events. I've spoken to bar associations, things of that nature. Like I say, it's taken me places. I've got a one-man show coming up in Glendale where I talk about the case that brought so much infamy into my life, called Overcoming Jodi Arias, and that's at Stir Crazy on August 9th. So that's been rescheduled. And I've got a lot of books out. One of my, apart from Fighting for Yourself, Defend Your Greatness, it's a more universal lessons of everything I learned through cancer and going through that treatment and battling the infamy that came upon me. And I've got my Nurmi Unchained and on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. So that's it.
Right. No, that's thank you for sharing all that. And again, thank you for, even after your service in the legal community and, helping, I probably can't even tell you how many people you came across in your legal career. We thank you for that. And furthermore, thank you for doing even more for the community now with your book and everything you're at. So we're excited to have you on today. We definitely want to bring you on again to talk about the future and where things are going. So maybe in a month or two we'll check in with you, see what kind of things have been popping up, and we'll bring you back on the show and choose another topic that gets legal with PTSD. Maybe that's what we'll talk about. We'll say, how do we get legal with PTSD? What does that mean? And dive into some of these different areas with lawyers and maybe the mental health issues, and maybe try to use this as a platform to reach those lawyers that need some help. So thank you for being here today.
You bet, Chris. I appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you next time.
All right.
Well, guys, that's the wrap for today's live stream with Kirk. He'll definitely be back on the show, and we'll dive into some other topics. But again, hey, helpmeptsd.com. That's where we're at. That's where you can find us. If you're a client or a provider, that's where you want to be. We are a mobile-friendly, web-based client-provider platform. All accounts for clients are free, and if you want to be a member and you're a provider already, hey, we got some great business solutions for you. So head over to helpmeptsd.com, make your free account today, get in touch with me. I'm the owner and CEO, and I guarantee if you sign up, you will be talking to me at some point during that process. So again, thank you for tuning in today. We'll be back next week with other great guest speakers and talking about topics that can help you overcome your trauma. So I'm Chris Lengyel, the CEO and owner. I will see you guys next time.